the Lesion takes back its throne. Although this has happened a few months ago, I still think that the Lesion is one of the most powerful, if not the best polearm you can have right now. This is my Lesion Unrelentless Harmony build. And yeah, I just added ONY to the end of Lesion's description, so that's how I got this build's name. Anyway, if you want to see the build right now, then be sure to refer to the timestamp displayed on your screen right now. So let us cover the basic stats of the Lesion and its special feature. Although the Lesion has been buffed like a few months ago, I'm just going to tell you guys the changes anyway. The Lesion has 15% crit chance instead of 5, 2 times crit multiplier, 37% sailor's chance instead of 30, 2.7 range instead of 1.5, and 237 damage instead of 100. That is a solid 137 base damage increase. When you consider the fact that you're going to add in more damage increasing mods, 137 is actually quite a lot. As you may have noticed, a lot of weapons nowadays can be built for hybrid. The Lesion is no different. Before, you would only build it for status. Now, you can build it for crit and status together, which means you can just slap on Blood Rush and expect it to work well. So now let's talk about the special feature that the Lesion possesses. For those who don't know, whenever you proc a status effect on an enemy, it will trigger this buff where you will get 15% extra attack speed for 6 seconds as well as 100% more toxin damage. This toxin damage that we are talking about here doesn't add multiplicatively to your weapon. Instead, it's additive, which means if you already have the mod Virulent Scourge in your build, this buff will only add 100% more toxin damage, and that's pretty much it. You will get 160% toxin damage in total. In other words, only viral or corrosive damage will have more damage, but not others. I'm just going to emphasize on the fact that when you have this buff active, it will not deal an extra status type on an enemy, but it only increases the damage of your existing status types. I have mentioned the same thing twice, so I hope you guys can get it, because explaining damage calculations and all to you guys is very hard, so yeah. Anyway, let's just get on to the build, since this is what you guys came here for anyway. This is my Lesion build, which consists of 3 formas. However, formaing the stand slot isn't really necessary, so you can say that it's just 2 formas. But 3 is more of a luxury. Anyway, let's go over to the mods. First of all, we have Condition Overload, which is pretty much the pinnacle mod of every Melee 3.0 build out there. It simply increases 120% melee damage per status type on an enemy. We have 5 status types in this build. Assuming that we can proc all of them, we can get up to 700% damage increase, which is freaking amazing. Next, we have Primed Reach, which is pretty much a mandatory mod for every polearm. It just simply increases your attack range, and since polearms naturally has a lot of attack range, adding this mod will just contribute to your overall crowd control potential. And then we have 3 elemental mods. First of all, Primed Fever Strike. The reason why we are not using a 60-60, aka a dual stat mod, is because A, if we use this Primed Fever Strike mod, we can raise the base damage of the Lesion, which means it can have more crit potential, considering the fact that we have Blood Rush and Organ Shatter in this build. B, you already have a considerable amount of status chance in your build. You don't even need Weeping Wounds because 81% is more than enough. And yes, about Weeping Wounds, you don't need it because Lesion is a status based weapon after all, so you don't really need to add another status based mod into a status based weapon. Unless you are looking for one of those builds where it exceeds 100% status chance, which will give you a completely different scenario and use case. Well, maybe not so quote-unquote completely different, but it's a different concept. Moving on, we have the other 2 elemental mods, which are Vicious Frost and Volcanic Edge. These 2 60-60 mods will increase your status chance and elemental damage at the same time. And then we have Berserker, which increases your attack speed whenever you land a critical hit. And then finally, we have Organ Shatter and Blood Rush. Because the Lesion has 15% crit chance right now, you can make use of Blood Rush and make this weapon even more powerful than it used to be. So this weapon doesn't just have status stacking potential but also crit potential, which is always very nice when it comes to melee weapons, because you want to land your status effects and crit at the same time. Finally, for the stance selection. Earlier, I mentioned that you don't really need to forma your stance slot. The reason being, the Lesion is already so strong that whichever stance you pick doesn't really matter. So right now it boils down to just personal preference. If you like the animation and convenience of using that stance, then go ahead and pick that one. For example, Shimmering Blight. It's the easiest and the least movement restricting stance you can use for the Lesion. You can just simply spam your melee key and expect it to work well. If you want to maximize your damage potential, you can invest in Bleeding Willow or Twirling Spire. However, Twirling Spire has more damage multipliers and more guaranteed procs compared to Bleeding Willow. Although, Bleeding Willow has some pretty cool looking animations, especially Drifting Steel, which turns you into a freaking helicopter, except it's upside down. But still, really cool animations. Anyway, back to Twirling Spire. The reason why we are using this stance is actually pretty simple. If you take a look at the combo list, you will see a lot of guaranteed procs, a lot of damage multipliers, and especially Summit Plunge, which is the most easiest combo you can pull off. By just holding your aim, your guard, ADS or whatever key you call it, and hit your melee key once, you will pull off the entire attack animation. Not just that, you will also get a huge damage increase. Just look at that, 200% damage multiplier, 400% damage multiplier with a knockdown effect. Insane. For the other combos, however, this is the simplified version. Crestling Peak is for crowd control, because you have guaranteed slash procs, impact procs, lift ups and knockdowns. Spiraling Pinnacle is the quote-unquote convenience combo, because out of all of the combos that you have in Twirling Spire, this is one of the least movement restricting ones. Vaulting Apex is pretty much for just catching up to enemies. Finally, Summit Plunge, again, is for dealing with tough enemies. So that's it for the build and stance explanation. Let's talk about the benchmarks, which I will show you guys later. Because how else would you know if this build is strong without a benchmark? So again, our usual victims, level 155 corrupted enemies and a mix of Corpus enemies but in their Eximus forms, plus they are in their Terra forms, otherwise known as the Obvalis version of Corpus enemies, because they are more stronger. And yeah, let's get started with the benchmarks. And that's pretty much it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys liked it, then be sure to leave a like, write a nice comment, and please consider subscribing. If you want to help upkeep this channel and to support me, then be sure to check out my Patreon page in the link in the description below. Once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in another video. Goodbye.